Hello everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and I'm with Spencer from Miller Ancients. We are going to be reviewing his recent $600 coin auction purchase from Roma Numismatics. We've got most of this coin, it's all silver. Most of it is around the time of Jesus, so first centuries BC and AD, except for one that's the 3rd century AD, but we're just going to be learning a bunch of the history about this stuff. I think that these coins have really cool, just looks to them, eye appeal, and we'll be starting with these two, then we'll cover these two and finish with 3, but so much information gained. I assume, should we talk about this first coin and then this shortly after, or do them?
Let's do them together.
Okay.
First of all, thanks for having me back. And these two coins are both Hellenistic Greek. So what does that mean? The Hellenistic world was the Greek world in Asia after the conquests of Alexander the Great. Alexander's death triggered a war of succession between his generals, and the two who, this war lasted 20 years, and the two who did the best, if you could flip over the one on the right, were Ptolemy, whose great something grandson is on the right, and Seleucus, whose great grandson is on the left. And the Seleucid Empire stretched from the Aegean Sea, modern Turkey, all the way to the Indus River. And the Ptolemaic Empire was centered in Egypt, but also had some holdings in Crete and in modern-day Israel and the southern coast of Turkey. They were the two mightiest states of their day until both were eventually conquered and annexed by the Roman Republic. These two are both struck at the twilight of their power when Rome had already superseded them in prestige and Mediterranean power. Both struck around the turn of the 2nd to 1st century BC.
Okay, and can you talk a little bit about the designs on the back? Why was this bird important, and who's the man, with decent physique sitting down in the chair?
That would be Zeus on the left. Ptolemaic coinage initially bore the portrait of Apollo on the reverse, Apollo with a bow. Apollo was sort of the patron god, very informal patron god of the Seleucid Empire. And every Ptolemaic coin, the ones on the right, feature the Ptolemaic eagle. So all the tetradrams, this is actually an interesting note, almost all Ptolemaic tetradrams bear the portrait of the founder of the dynasty, Ptolemy the First, on the front. They don't continue to update with every new king. So, in fact, the Ptolemaic dynasty is incredibly complicated because every single king was named Ptolemy. So it's Ptolemy the First, Ptolemy the Second, Ptolemy the Third, and it goes on until I think the 13th or 14th. So this is like Ptolemy the 10th or something. But it's all the portrait of Ptolemy the First. It's really, honestly, kind of weird. Whereas the Seleucid Empire, it was a more, I guess, traditional way of doing things where, although many of the names were the same, there was some variation between Seleucus and Antiochus and Demetrius, and the portraits did update to match the features of the reigning monarchs as opposed to just keeping the bust of Ptolemy the First, the founder of the dynasty.
Interesting. And maybe we'll cover, sort of your price paid and estimate on each of these two.
Yeah, so the coin on both of these coins are pretty worn on the obverse. I think the one on the right I paid around $70, $65 to $70, and then the one on the left I think I overpaid a little bit. I paid $95.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, to just think that you can get coins from this time period that have decent eye appeal, a tetragram sized, weight to them for under $100, and, maybe retail it's a little bit higher than that. So fascinating. And we had a brief interruption there, but I do want to ask questions about these, except I don't really know what to ask. I don't even know, are these Roman or Greek, and what's the difference between these and the Ptolemy and Seleucid coins that we just looked at?
So, funnily enough, I would actually say that they're sort of a mix between Roman and Greek. I mean, they are Roman, but they're Roman provincial, both struck in the east of the empire, so they retain some Greek characteristics. For example, that coin, which was struck at Alexandria in Egypt, it's actually Billon, not silver, has Greek letters on it, and it depicts a portrait of the Roman Emperor Vespasian, but it has Greek letters and was struck in a majority Greek-speaking city and it's a Greek denomination. It's a tetradrachm. It's not a denarius or an aureus or a dupondius. It's not a Roman denomination. So it's sort of a hybrid between the two cultures. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and why would it be a hybrid? Is it just because there would have been, you want to appeal to all the users of the coin, and that's why they do it?
So in Egypt, the Egyptians were very proud of their currency system, so that when Augustus annexed Egypt from Cleopatra in 30 BC, the Egyptians, and Egypt, mind you, was the wealthiest province of the Roman Empire, the Egyptians insisted that they be allowed to maintain their independent currency system. And Augustus granted them that privilege because Egypt was such an important province. It supplied all the grain for the city of Rome, which had 1 million people living there. It was the breadbasket of the empire, and also the empire's wealthiest province, because all the trade coming from India, from the Far East, came through the Red Sea, through the port of Pelusium. And Egypt was just, like, by leaps and bounds, Rome's wealthiest province. So Augustus granted them the right to strike their own tetradrachms on their own weight standard. These aren't on the Attic standard, they're on the Ptolemaic Egyptian standard of weight. And this continued far, far beyond when other cities were minting their tetradrachms. Similar privileges were granted to cities like Antioch, other really prominent Eastern Greek cities, but they were revoked before Egypt. In fact, this lasted till around 300 AD, that Egypt maintained a completely isolated currency system just because it was that important of a province for Rome.
Interesting. Wow. What was the value on this? Both paid and market value.
Yeah, paid. I think I paid like $60 for it, and it's worth about $70.
Cool. And then what about this one? How does this differ? Is it also, and I think before the video we had mentioned extremely weak strike, almost looks like somebody sanded it down. But how does this differ from the previous coin?
So it's also Roman provincial, but one way in which it differs is it has Latin on the obverse. So it's a little less of a hybrid. This is more of a Roman provincial example as opposed to a hybrid between Roman and Greek. This was struck in the city of Ephesus in Western Asia Minor, another long-established city, but a city that by no means could provide the economic value to the Roman Empire, where they were allowed to maintain a completely independent currency system. Although they did strike this denomination, which is called a Sistophorus. They struck them all the way back from the time when they were independent, ruled by themselves in the 2nd century BC. Mark Antony struck a ton of Sistophori in Ephesus. Augustus did as well, and the production continued through the mid-2nd century. This is a coin of Nerva, and though the reverse on this coin is terrible, in fact, I would say you basically can't really see anything. There's a legionary standard if you flip it the other way. It's supposed to be a Roman legionary eagle, but the reverse is practically non-existent. But Nerva only reigned for 2 years. His imperial coinage, denarii, are scarce, but this Sistophori, since many fewer were struck, are even scarcer. So this is actually a pretty rare coin.
And remind me, Sistophori versus denarii, how many denarii to make a Sistophori?
They're not on the same scale. Sistophori was sort of a system unique to a couple cities in Western Asia Minor. But just to give you a comparison, denarii were about 3 grams, maybe a little over 3 grams in this period, and Sistophori, I think, are around 11. Okay. So substantially, but not a full tetradrachm, smaller than a tetradrachm.
Interesting. Thanks for that perspective. Well, moving on, before the video you had mentioned these 3 would go together. Obviously can't hold all of them, but why do they go together, and then which order should we talk about these coins in?
So these come from the Roman Republican period, and I guess we'll start with the oldest one, the one in the center. It's not a denarius, it's a victoriatus struck during the Second Punic War. Second Punic War was a life or death struggle that the Roman Republic had with Carthage. In fact, I think if they had lost that war, many of us would never have heard of Rome today.
Wow.
It was sort of the make or break event for the Roman state, and as soon as they won the Second Punic War, they became the decisive power in the Western Mediterranean, then the whole sea. But this coin was struck right in the middle of the war when all of that was not even on the horizon. In fact, it was probable to many that Rome would lose. This coin was struck either in Rome or in I think this is from an uncertain mint in southern Italy. But this is struck at sort of a really dire moment for the Roman state. As you can see, there's victory on the reverse. They were really hoping that victory would come.
Yeah. And now the Victoriatus, is that a little bit smaller than a denarius or another different standard?
Yeah, it is a little smaller. I don't know the correlation. Just based on weight, it might be, 2/3. This is a very short-lived denomination. It was not
Okay.
around for a long time. In fact, I only know of Victoriati from this exact issue structuring the Second Punic War. It might have been. Actually, no. I just don't know. So.
And are these wartime things a little more than valuable because they're in the wartime and because it's a scarcer denomination, or does that decrease the collectability?
So that's complicated because none of them were struck not during wartime.
Ah.
So they're all wartime pieces, so it's not like this one's worth more than others of the same type because it's the wartime. But I think in terms, especially with some of the finer examples, like when cataloging these at Heritage, I often write like an attractive example that has a lot of history from the Second Punic War.
Nice.
So
Which one should we move to here?
we'll move to the one on the left.
Okay.
So that's the next in chronological order.
I love the horses and the mini chariot there. Reminds me of some of the early 20th century Italian coins, which I think we're
probably
imitating
intentional,
it.
yeah.
But yeah, what's the story here?
So this is just a very standard middle Roman Republican denarius, beginning of the 1st century BC. On the obverse, you see the head of Sabinus. It might be Titus Tatius, actually, is his name, but he's a Sabine. That's what the legend means.
What does that
and
even mean?
In the earliest days of Rome, in fact, this is more legend than history. When Rome was a kingdom under Romulus, Titus Tatius was the king of the Sabines, and Romulus invited all of the women of the Sabine kingdom to come because there were no women in Rome and they needed to create more children, and they abducted all the women.
Oh my goodness.
And then Titus Tatius came with his army to reclaim the women, but then they, I think, came to a truce, and then the Sabines and the Romans sort of merged to become one people.
Wow.
So
Interesting. That would probably go over poor from a political perspective if somebody tried that today.
Tough luck, yeah.
Yeah, but what could a collector buy something like this for?
So I got a pretty good deal on this because, as you could see on the reverse, there are adjustment marks. Now, this was done when a coin was overweight, and they're trying to adjust it down to the standard. Some people hate that. Some people think that ruins the coin, but I still think it is a very pretty obverse. I was able to get this really cheap. I think I paid under $50 for it, and or maybe around $50. And I think it's probably worth like $75.
Nice. Cool. Our last one of the day, I think you had mentioned, was pretty rare, at least at one point, but it's not in a great condition, or maybe it was super expensive in mint state. But if we can sort of, I think that this is the right way to hold it. It looks like a person there standing on a step or something. Why is this so collected?
So this is a coin of the Imperatorial period, late Republic, which is one of the most collected areas of Roman coins. It's when you have the coins of Caesar Augustus, of Julius Caesar, of Mark Antony, of Brutus and Cassius. All of the history that sort of everyone knows about Rome is in the Imperatorial period. And another figure that is somewhat of a household name to at least people who know Roman history is Pompey the Great. This is a coin of his son Sextus Pompey, who after his illustrious father's death couldn't really live up to his dad's rep, and sort of tried to make a go of it ruling Sicily, but failed. And this was one of the coins he struck with, I think that's his father's portrait, Pompey the Great's portrait. This coin is pretty beat up. It's got a lot of nicks, but I think I got it for a great price. I paid only, I think, $60 for it. And in mint state, these sell for thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. And even in a grade like this, I think I can get maybe $200 for it. So
definitely cooler to be sort of at the heart of the Roman history that we know well today on a coin like this, the son of Pompey, I guess.
Yeah.
Just really cool. And so thank you for joining us and speaking about all these coins, fun buys, and I'll look forward to seeing how they do in your sales.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Treasure Town, and get in touch with me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Also, check out my website, treasuretowncoins.com, for news and updates related to the channel and collectibles in general. Lastly, there's a link tree in the description with links to all of my other sites, as well as some affiliate links that can support the channel. But with that being said, Have a great day, and I'll hope to see you on some of my videos in the future.